Oh, Janeen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking about how you have a school group and you have a Facebook group with actually a lot of people in them.
Yeah, so when I came to France, I had this fabulous idea of creating a paid membership community for expat women in France, or really English-speaking women. And so I started the Facebook group to build up my reputation, my credibility, and to get to know people. And it's called Expat Women in France. And we have 21,000 women in it. I have never done any advertising. It's all organic. And I've made a real point of making it a very positive, supportive group so that people, women can ask questions without fear of getting trolled or, put down for, oh, what a stupid question. Because I've seen that in other groups. I went, no. So we don't have that. So yeah, that's working well. And then as a subset of that, and my attempt to get some return on my investment, I created what I've called the Entrepreneur Club. And that's a subgroup of expat women, of women who are basically solopreneurs. And so they pay a subscription fee. We've put the community onto school with a K, and so that's like a separate thing, and we provide support for business. And I have a monthly mastermind, which is really focused on ways to grow your business, so promotion, marketing, that sort of thing, and also a monthly open forum, so the women can just get together and feel supported and not alone and ask any questions they like. And that's what I've got in at 2 p.m. today because I'm in France.
That's amazing. The school platform, it's one of the good ones. There are so many membership platforms, but this one is supported and at least partly owned by Alex Hormozy. So it's with someone who really wants people to create businesses. That's encouraging, I think.
Yeah. And it's run by, I'm looking under my desk. So it's run by a guy called, is it Sam Ovens or Owens? Something like that. And what's really interesting, I think he was originally Australian or New Zealand. I think he was Australian. And he started up a, like marketing, sales, coaching, like consulting to the coaches years ago. And I actually bought one of his initial programs. So I had to say I never actually went through and did it all, which I've done with so many online programs, and I'm sure many other people will relate to that. But he's running it. I think it's Sam Ovens. And so I'm sort of quite impressed with where he's got to in the last, let's call it 10 years. So he's done very well for himself because he was really, really young when he started, like about early 20s, and he started off in his parents' garage and then he moved over to the States. It's an interesting character as well.
It seems to be easier. It seems like it's easier for people to create businesses in other countries. I know that's quite a generalization, but quite a few Aussies now are saying there are all of these challenges to making a business over here. Have you found that it's easier to grow the dream that you want in another country?
I think it might be easier in the US, especially for the sort of things we do for coaching, possibly training, speaking. There's a lot more speaking engagements available in the US. And so I think it's much easier to, let me position that. I think it has been a lot more easy to grow in the US. Who knows what's going to happen in the future now? It seems to be a lot of stresses and pressures there. I haven't found it easy in France, and I think that's partly because where I live is on the French Riviera. And so I'm not in Paris. I'm not in one of the main cities. And even though we have, let's call them big towns, small cities here, and there is a lot of business here, it's, I don't know, it's just different. I have not found it as easy. But starting up a free group on Facebook, that was easy as long as you get the right mix. Building up coaching, training, speaking, everything else has been much more of a challenge for me.
I see. Was it easier to provide something for free where you live?
It's always easier to provide something for free.
Yeah, fair.
People are quite happy to take it for free from you.
Totally, totally. There'll be quite some common ground around all of this because Aussies have been talking about how the taxes have changed and there are more taxes on businesses with the cost of living over here. I don't know what the costs of things would be like where you live.
It's not as high as Australia. And so I left Australia 7.5 years ago. And so at the end of 2019, I moved to France to live lock, stock and barrel. I went through my whole household. I sold it before I left, and I went through everything, and I had a little routine, and it was like, do I love it? If I love it, I'll take it with me. If I don't love it, I get rid of it. And then once I decided to get rid of it, it was like, can I sell it? Can I give it away to someone I know? Is it worth, like I sold lots on Marketplace, FB Marketplace, or does it just go in the bin? Or can it be recycled? So lots of little choices there. But my love it, and I was planning on buying a large rural property that I could convert into a retreat center or retreat and event center. That was my plan. So I decided to bring my furniture with me. I ended up having a 28-foot container shipped across, which people have said, yeah, it is expensive. I mean, probably the worst thing for me was the fact that I had everything in storage for 12 months between moving out of my house and actually coming over here. There was a lot to organize, or a lot that I sort of planned in between. So it might have been expensive, but I tell you what, when I got this apartment, and luckily everything fitted in here, I was like, oh, and it's just an apartment. So it's a big apartment. And I was just so pleased to be able to just get the delivery guys to deliver everything, unpack it, set it up. And I had my household, and I had, everything I'd collected in my life. I used to love buying things for the house and really nice things. And, recent years, I haven't had the impetus, but I haven't had the space. But I also haven't had the money to buy as nicer things as I did when I was, working in IT in my sort of 20s and 30s. And plus, I don't think they even make things as nice as they used to. There's many things like that. So I was really pleased to have my belongings in my space. And it made a big difference to settling in, because I didn't have to race around and try and buy everything at once. I brought my bed, my sofa, my dining table and chairs, and all the little bits and pieces. I didn't plan, I didn't think, I've got to have my sofa. But I'd paid, I think, about $5,000 for it. It was only 7 years old. It was in good nick. And I probably would have only got $200 or $300. So I thought, no, bugger that. That was my Aussie bit. I'm going to take it because, I may as well take it rather than waste that money. So, and it fitted. It fits beautifully. Yay.
I'm so keen to know are you willing to reveal what you spent to send your things across the world?
If I remember rightly, I think in total with storage for a year, I think it was about $11,000
Interesting.
But when you consider that, just my sofa had cost 5,000, I have French polished antique reproduction dining table and chairs that cost a few thousand. And then I have, lots of I have some beautiful china that cost a few thousand. So if you looked at replacing it, it would have cost a lot more than that.
It would. That's quite a choice. So looking beyond the move itself.
No, I want to tell you about what made me make the decision to move, because that's a really interesting part of my story. And it's quite significant, because I have loved France. I first came here when I was 25, and I've just always loved France. I've always felt at home here, even though I didn't speak the language. And so and I did move over, like when I got married at 27, we went over to the UK and we lived there for 3 years, working full time on 2-year working holiday visas. And we bought an apartment with a 95% mortgage. Wouldn't get away with any of that these days. But I just fell in love with France. And I had a friend tell me, when I made the decision to come here, she said, yes, I remember you talking about wanting to live in France back when we worked together, when you're in your late 20s. So it had always been there. And when I went back to Australia, bought the house, renovated, hoped to have children, but didn't. Marriage ended. Life just happened. And I sort of kept putting it off, also because both my parents were unwell and they were in an aged care facility. Mum had Lewy bodies dementia, which was just awful. Dad had had a stroke at 58 and by this stage was in a wheelchair and, quite disabled as far as, like, he had the brain damage as well. So there was part of me, now this is going to sound weird, but I was waiting for them to die in the nicest way possible because I wanted to be there with them. So I kept putting it off. And then I went to see a channeler, someone who channels messages. And I said, and business wasn't going great. I wasn't earning enough to live on. I was doing corporate training and it just wasn't regular enough work.
I'm going to ask about that after this story, by the way.
Yeah, we can talk about my evolution, my career, business evolution. So anyhow, I went to him and I said, what's my block? And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, help people, women, live a more fulfilling life. And he said, how well are you doing that yourself? I said, pretty crappily at the moment. And then he sort of went on to say, well, our purpose in life is not to help others. And I went, what? I've just spent 20 years in personal development learning that it's all about serving others. And he said, no, our purpose in life is to live the happiest life we can for ourselves. And when we do that, we'll have the right energy and vibration that will attract others to us to want to hear our story. And I sort of came out of that, or maybe while I was still in it, I just went, well, if that's the case, I may as well just move to France because that's what I really want to do. I was 57 at the time. I had a boyfriend. I never had kids, so that wasn't a hold in Australia. And so then I went through, that was May, and I went through clearing my house out, got ready to sell. I put it on the market at the end of August. I went to my knee surgeon. I said, right, I need a knee replacement because I knew I did. He'd already done 4 operations on the knee. And I said, and I need it at the end of August because that's when my house goes on the market. And he said, we orthopods don't just give you a knee replacement because you're going to France, And then he said, okay, I'll do it. I can do it on the 29th or 30th of August. I went, perfect, because it was open for inspection from the 1st. So that all fitted together. Then I got a 2-month settlement, and I'm going like, and it's just all working together. And so I put everything in storage, and I then came over to France for 3 months. Now this must have been, I'm losing track. Yeah, beginning of 2019. And that was me going to learn French. The only French I knew, really, apart from bonjour, parlez-vous anglais, it was, I call it recipe book French. It's what I learned from cooking French recipes. And it was, it was, so I knew all about food names. That was good. And I just went, okay. Yeah, I did not. Like, I thought, oh yeah, 3 months intense. I could get to conversational. No way. It was much, much harder. Still not conversational 7 years later. But it sort of, everything fitted together. And then I went back to Australia and got my visa and came over here. And that was, getting a visa was a huge effort as well. That was a lot of work. My portfolio was about this thick of just the papers for the visa that I had to submit to them. So that was my story of moving to France. And then at the end of 2018, the very end, I actually moved here.
And of course, you were lucky to make such a big shift before COVID happened.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, I was glad to be here in France and not in Victoria. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I wanted to move out of Australia, relating back to what you were saying about what's going on there, the tax laws, the fines, the restrictions, the everything that I saw going on there, I didn't like it. It was, it was moving away from the Australia I'd grown up in and loved. And I didn't like what was happening to it. So that was also part of, I didn't feel at home in Australia anymore. So yes, it was good to be here when COVID happened and to have all of that done. But it was a tough year because my mother, so my 16-year-old cat died in January, 2 weeks after I left. I like to think that she just didn't want to live without me. And if that makes me happy, that's what I'll do. And then my mother died in April and my father died in October. So I had 2, of that all in the same year, that first year here in France. So I had 2 trips back to Australia that I wasn't planning, which added to the expense a lot. And my boyfriend at the time had decided, he was Mauritian, so he was fluent in French, and he decided he would come to France with me. But I said to him, "This is your decision. I'm happy for you to come, but I'm not influencing you to come." Because it was very important that he was responsible for that position, not me. So he came, but it didn't work for him. He was going to go to school, a uni, but that didn't work out for him. And then he left the March.
How old was he?
Oh, he was a lot younger than me.
Oh, I'm so keen to know. Okay, how young was he?
He was 27 years younger than me. And
nice.
He was 21 when I first met him. He was just about to turn 22, but he wasn't your average 21-year-old. He was a very mature guy. So so that's why, we hadn't planned a whole future together. We agreed from the beginning that we would be together for as long as we enjoyed each other's company. And I just think that's a great way to approach any relationship. It's like, well, once you stop enjoying each other's companies, then what's the point of being together? So he came over, and then he left just before the lockdown. So in 15 months, I lost basically the 4 loves of my life, and then went straight into lockdown and had to deal with that, living on my own and being alone. And luckily I had a couple of friends that I could go and visit nearby. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. And I did get 2 kittens just before he left because I made sure I got kittens so I had company when he left.
You knew, did you see it coming?
Well, no, it was planned. Like he said, well, the course hasn't worked. And so that meant his visa ran out and because he didn't have a student visa anymore. He did go back to Mauritius and then come back here for the 3 months that you're allowed with the Schengen states. And then he had to go back, but it was what he wanted to do as well. And it was time for him to go and live his life on his own without me. Well, he didn't really. Like for 4 years, we stayed best friends and communicated all the time and shared everything, just by video calls. But it was time for him to start making decisions on his own.
I will definitely ask about the training in a bit, but you brought up relationships in a way that I didn't expect. And this is something to explore. You're living the single life, but you also made an interesting decision. You both agreed that you weren't necessarily committing to forever. And I see a great honesty in both of you deciding, okay, you're just going to, I shouldn't say just, you're going to live a happy life and it works until it doesn't. That's an honesty compared to those who say something's forever when it's not. That's a decision in itself. But now, how do you perceive relationships now, especially you had a marriage and then a boyfriend? How do you approach relationships at this stage in life?
Well, I'd just love to have a relationship to approach, to start. But I would go in with the same attitude that I did with Dovik. That because I've been married, I've done the forever, and it lasted 11 years. But it was a 20-year relationship. We were 17, we were high school sweethearts. 17 when we first started going out, 27 when we got married. We didn't rush into it. And 37 when we separated. So that was 20 years. And it's just being pragmatic and realistic that we can't go into any relationship, even business relationships, with the expectation that it's forever. We might go in with a desire and a yearning for it to be forever. And we might be so in love with that person and they're so in love with us that we make a commitment. But really, we can only make a commitment to, being together for as long as we enjoy the relationship. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do any work on the relationship and on being together with each other. You still do that. You still make it work for as long as you want to make it work. But I just think that's a much healthier way to approach things.
It seems like the realistic angle to this is that even though people hope that something could last, sometimes it doesn't anyway.
Yeah, often. Well, the reality is every relationship will end, either because someone leaves the relationship or through death. There will always be an end of a relationship. And unless you're in the Notebook and you manage to go out together at the end. Do you remember the movie The Notebook? Yes.
Didn't watch it, actually. I should.
Oh, it was so sweet. Really, really lovely. But now I've told you the ending. Shock, horror. I've told everyone the ending. God. Most people have seen it who are going to see it.
But it's a fair point.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. And I think what happens to us so much in life is that we don't prepare ourselves for the realities of life. And the realities of life is that death is part of life. We just want to make sure we live life first, live to the fullest. But, there will be death and there'll be deaths along the way. And, losing my cat was devastating, even though I'd moved away from her already. My parents, that was expected and we were effectively waiting for it, anticipating it because they were both so unwell. And so there was part of me that was sort of relieved as well for them in the end, because they were both suffering. And so there was relief as part of that. And and also, you can be sad and relieved at the same time in situations like that, especially with elderly parents. But, with a relationship, I would absolutely go into it so positively. I mean, this is going to sound a bit strange. I mean, I'm 66 and I don't feel like I've ever been truly, truly in love and loved. I can look back on my other two relationships and there was always something holding back there. And so my intention is I want to be in a truly deep and loving relationship. And, I know I'm
Yes.
capable of it, and I'll find a man who is also capable of it.
I can relate to that so much. This is interesting because we got into this talking about business, but these things, relationships affect our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
It affects everything. And what you said, honestly, you said something very courageous, because it does give an opinion about the past people you were with. And I just see so many parallels. I saw parallels before when you were talking about your parents. My grandmother died in 21, tail end of COVID. And now you're saying that you never really felt loved. I relate to that.
No, I'm not saying I
Okay.
never felt love. There's a difference. Oh, no, it's really interesting what you say, because I was sitting in my car the other day and saying, and so I felt loved by my parents. Let's, just put that aside. That was a happy family, all of that. Had its issues. Every family does. But I was sitting in my car the other day and I thought, when was the last time I felt truly loved? And I really, I think it was my wedding day. It's like,
Wow.
that was a long time ago. That's like 40 years ago. Because I was thinking about it, this relationship with the younger guy, he just had, and it's nothing against the personalities of my husband or my ex-husband and my ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, ex-husband, ex-boyfriend. Easy way to differentiate.
They were, they were lovely guys, of course, or I wouldn't have been with them for so long. But they were both sort of a bit emotionally stunted in showing love. And so you're sort of right in that I never felt truly loved and supported by them.
That feels very familiar. Emotionally stunted is a fascinating way to put it, because a lot of men seem emotionally reserved. But look, you're clearly older than me. Do you see that? Do men just take longer to grow up? What do you think is going on in all this?
But now isn't this an interesting question, considering I was with a guy 27 years my junior, and he was only 22, sort of thing. But he was in many ways mature. And my ex-husband, we grew up together. And we just never grew enough as people. And I was ready to grow. And that was, for me, one of the reasons why my marriage needed to end. Not that I ended it. He went off with another woman, but I could see why it needed to happen. I think some guys just never grow up. I don't know if you have you ever done any personal development workshops, that sort of thing?
Professional development. Of course, I came from the public speaking world, but I haven't done the personal development things with personality types, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's just exploring. For me, personal development is about exploring who you are and why you are and how you are in this world, and really getting to the source of it, because we have so many we put on so many masks and layers as we grow up, and it's all about adapting to the life and experiences that we have. So if they are, really awful and traumatic, then we'll have different sorts of masks. To someone who, like my mother, I felt like I needed to be perfect for her to notice me and to give me positive feedback, because she was just very critical. So we all have these different ways of adapting to our world, and personal development is about digging through, removing those layers and delving through to find out, well, who are we truly at the source of who we are? And I do have a coaching program for women called the Reinvention Journey, which is about doing exactly that, and it's over a 12-month period, but most of the heavy work is in the first 6 months. And then it's maintenance from there. And that is, it's a lot of work. But the reason I asked about the personal development courses is that whenever you go to any of these sorts of things that are personal growth, self-growth, spiritual, you will find that it's like 70 or 80% women. So that tells you that it's the women that are really looking to grow and improve themselves, and not as many men are. So that's why they don't increase in their emotional intelligence. They don't mature emotionally, and they still hold on to dysfunctional behaviors and patterns.
Yes. The mask.
You didn't expect to go there, did you?
Oh, look, we're going everywhere today. I'm loving this. Sometimes I get talks that are a bit more structured, or someone mainly focuses on their work, but sometimes there's something a bit extra uncensored where it just feels like you're talking to a best friend. And I love those sorts of episodes, conversations. The mask. That's a big one, because you talked about how we can have a mask, but now you're also saying that it's mostly women who are going to these personal development things. I'm joining some dots here, because I would say that quite a few of the men I've been involved with were wearing a mask.
Everyone does. We all do.
Everybody does.
Everybody.
We all do.
Yeah. It's natural human behavior. It's natural human evolution to do that. But the women, and this is, I think, they talk about the male loneliness syndrome. I think this is where it's coming from, is that women are evolving and they're learning more about themselves, and they're learning how to be more functional and, higher in emotional intelligence. If the men aren't doing that, then they're just not there with us. We're like going up like this, and the men are staying here. And then they go, oh, why can't I find a woman? And all these women, so many of these women, are mature, successful, independent, and single.
It is happening so much. It is. This is encouraging and comforting, knowing that it's happening to quite a bunch of us.
I know so many here.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Are the women over there feeling successful but not finding someone who is ready to match their depth?
Yeah, that's a good summary of it. Yeah, and I'm looking for. So okay, I'm going to really be bare my all here. So the sort of man I'm looking for, this is my criteria, is ambitious in life. So that's not necessarily corporate ambitious, but ambitious to make a difference in this world. Intelligent, of course, passionate and romantic. I'm going to put them together. Active and, keeping fit and healthy. A good lover, of course. Has to do that.
You need that.
Yeah. And there's something else as well. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. So even that, like just, financially stable, probably independent, at least, financial. And you just put that together. It's like, how many men are there? Yeah, of course, the most important one that I just mentioned, to be conscious and aware of themselves and others. And I know I'm fishing in a very small pool.
Yes, and we're not looking for a Ken doll or a Zoolander here. They don't have to be completely perfect, or they don't have to have $1 billion.
Yeah, no, I'm not looking for a man to support me. You know, it might be nice every now and then. But no, I'm not looking for a man who's got the right car and the right house and the right bank account and the right job. They're not the important things in life.
Hope that the men will actually listen to this conversation, because I would say a lot of men are assuming that they are only suitable once they have the correct car, house, and job. But in this day and age, with how the economy is, with how the world is running, I would say most of us are missing something that we want or need, really.
Yes. Yeah. And also I'm going to go back to the younger ex. I mean, when I met him, he was pretty much a poor, starving student. You know, he'd just come across from Mauritius a year before. He was struggling to earn enough money, working in a nightclub at nights on the weekend to live on and pay his things. So I definitely don't just go for money.
Absolutely. But it's about having the goals. For me, I like all that criteria that you said, but it's important to me that someone is taking action towards goals, because people can hope and dream. I get so concerned if someone is saying, eventually, years from now, I want to become this, become that. Well, okay, well, what are you doing to make it happen?
Yeah, well, at my age, I think we've run out of eventually. It's like, it's now or never.
Feeling that way at 37, honestly.
Wow, okay. You still got a lot of years to go.
Thanks.
But yeah, now my preference would be for a mature man, probably in his 50s, you know, established. But age is not the issue to me. It's the connection that I feel with someone, with anyone, for a friendship or a relationship or business.
It's a maturity. I've met guys in their 40s and 50s who are still behaving like they're 25. It's absolutely about the mindset. It's about the person. But look, I wanted to pivot, because at this point,
Get going.
I feel like I've talked for half a podcast episode about boys and men. This is hilarious.
Well, we haven't. We talked about my life, but you know.
Yes.
Yeah, but we can pivot.
We can pivot. As fun as this is, I just feel like I could talk for hours with you about men, but a pivot feels right. The training.
Well, I did mention business. I gave you the segue. A relationship, you know, connection in intimate relationships, friendships, and business. Let's move on.
You know what? The reason this has got my attention so much is because I don't talk about it much on the podcast. And someone actually asked me a day or two ago, would I talk about relationships on the podcast? I'm so careful, because I barely hint in the slightest about the past relationships that I've had, because you don't know who's going to listen. This is going out to the world, and I don't want to embarrass anybody. But at the same time, it's my life and my journey. It's almost convenient when a guest like you will open up about stories, and then I can say, "Ooh, this feels so relatable." And then I don't have to figure out where that line is that I'm going to draw, especially because some of the people I've been involved with are a little bit public and some aren't. But anyway.
Just a point on that. I think as long as we are always honest and respectful and speak with integrity, then that's okay. You know, if we're not going to say anything that's demeaning to our relationship or that person, which we can't online, that would be stupid, then, you know, we're okay. I think it's okay to be open and honest.
I appreciate that a lot. I would say that it opens up extra compassion when we're setting that standard. You have to you have to be extra kind when talking about people online. The thing that I wanted to say, and I was a little bit hesitant, is in something I was in quite recently, it felt like I was in Downton Abbey.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah,
Go on.
really,
Oh, tell
really,
me
it
more.
ended up, oh, okay. Well, so much of the time together was around other people, and there was this expectation to tick a box, fulfill requirements, and just look correct. Not even totally proper. I wasn't going around with a string of pearls all day long, but there was this expectation, but it was a standard that nobody else holds me to. And I've met people from all walks of life, but also there was no chance to just privately, quietly be an unfiltered, raw human and just curl up with a cup of tea, that sort of thing. That wasn't happening. It was all shake hands and be around everybody else, to the point where, yes, even, of course, the talking properly, that happened anyway because I talk a particular way. And I swear to you, there were some moments where I was thinking, this has to be a scene out of the bloody Downton Abbey. It has to.
God. Okay.
So that was something.
So what you've talked about is having to wear a mask all the time.
All the time.
And never being able to just pull that off and go, I'm just want to be me tonight. And I mean, I love I love living on my own, and I love my nights where I just have my tracky dacks and a wind cheater on, and I lay on the couch and I watch whatever I want on Netflix, and no makeup, hair not done, and it's lovely. We all need that downtime. We all need that time to just be whoever the hell we want to be at the time, which is us, naturally and authentically.
You're identifying something that anyone needs. Well, we all need that, but especially when we are public facing in some way. Needing the downtime, what you identified is the need to not be on show. To some extent, everybody has that extra mask now. So many of us are on social media, or people wear a mask for their jobs, things like that. But you're a coach with a big community on social media, and I'm doing the podcast and other things. I was hosting a conference a couple of months ago. When you're facing people so much, do you find there's extra desire to just not have to be on show, and you need those moments where you're just being a person instead of a character?
Well, if you haven't worked this out about me yet, I'm pretty much who I am on show. I've given up on trying to be anyone else because, as someone said, the only way you can be perfect is to do you perfectly. And so I am just me. And I also believe that, especially in this age of AI, people want to see real, authentic people. And real, authentic people show vulnerability because we're human, and we always have some things that we will be vulnerable with for. So I think it's actually even more important these days, where AI is showing everything perfectly, and we can just be the perfect speakers and say the perfect thing. But it's the mistakes, the vulnerability, the yes, this happened to me. Yes, I was crushed. Yes, I was depressed. Being able to say that, but also for business in particular, to position it as, this is what I learned. This is what I got out of it. And this is where I've come to now. Always don't just, although I have posted on Facebook, I have posted my most vulnerable moments. And sometimes it is because I needed to feel supported because, living alone and being alone, I needed to be supported out there. So I just think it's important to be authentically yourself these days.
That is so true. People want to connect with a person more than a brand these days.
Yeah. And they want to know you're real because there's so much fakeicity. I made that word up. It's a very good word.
There's a lot of fakeness. I was telling someone earlier today. Now, I won't name names when I was comparing myself to someone else because to each their own, but there are some speakers out there who will do their hair up, put on a whole layer of makeup and just tell people how to make money. That's all great. Making money sounds awesome. I would love to make more money. I'll put that out there to the universe, by the way.
Thank you, universe, for more money coming in. And I did already do a plug on the reinvention journey, so.
You did. However, to each their own, but I was able to explain to someone today that what I do is a bit more raw and it keeps bringing people in. I mean, can you believe I've had more than 90 of these podcast episodes and it's just me at a MacBook with this microphone. I need to just wrap my head around this with you for a second. I've talked with someone who had been a journalist in DC during the Obama era. I talked with someone recently who did campaigns from the White House. I've talked with an Olympic ski coach, an Emmy winner. I mean, earlier today, I was talking with an orthopedic doctor. I've chatted with most types of medical specialists.
Wow.
And a whole bunch of yogis as well. But the point being, and you have all this training background that we'll get to a sentence or two from now. I've talked with so many people and it's like, there's something about this raw conversation that everybody is drawn to. No matter who someone is, we just want to have a chat.
People want real. They just want real. And real stories are more interesting than the orchestrated ones.
They are. So now we're ready for the pivot and the training. What were you teaching people when you were training?
Okay, so I'll just do a quick so that people can understand my background. I actually studied a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Stats and Maths. God only knows why, another lifetime ago. Oh, and I did mention to you the other day, and you said this was interesting. I studied psychology in first year, but because I was so good at maths, I didn't continue it. I really loved it. And I sort of tossed up, and I wish I'd known more about my personality type at the time, because I would have continued psychology and even made it my major. But I didn't. So I finished uni and I came out of a programming degree, and I didn't want to be a programmer. So I knew that.
I can't imagine you being a programmer.
No, I was good, but it's okay. Interesting story. We had four programmers. I was sitting in a room with four programmers, and I'd sit there and I'd work away and I'd look up, and all three of them, they'd be working, and I'd go, and I just had a need to speak to a person. So I would get up. We actually worked in a factory that was manufacturing computers. I would get up and walk around the offices and even the factory just to talk to people.
Because you need conversation.
That was my need. I needed people contact. That's the sort of person I am. And so then my boss saw this and went, okay, I'll make her the customer service manager. So I created a whole customer service group from scratch for this particular computer company. And then I moved into pre-sales and sales. And I was in pre-sales when I was working in the UK, and then sales. And then I did a grad dip of marketing and then a master's of business in marketing. So I did both. And recognized that I enjoyed the sales and marketing side of it much more. So I spent a lot of time in the IT industry, sort of evolving from technical, but mostly on the sales side. And then I've also been made redundant 5 times, which I think is significant because I'm a bit forward. It's like I'm not backward in coming forward. And I'm one of these what if type people. So I can look at something and say, oh, that could be done better if. And I found that a lot of my male bosses didn't appreciate that coming from me. And in the IT industry, I had a lot of like sexual discrimination. They'd look at me and they go, oh, attractive blonde, big boobs, doesn't know what she's talking about, until they started talking to me. No, seriously, they did. And then they'd start talking to me and they'd sort of go, oh, you actually are intelligent and you know what you're talking about. And then men would struggle with this because it's like, oh no, but I had this image of her, but she's there and does not compute. So yeah, I was restructured out of jobs and everything, and not
Let's
because
look at that for
yeah,
a second.
yeah, sure.
That's big. And I'm wondering, have you seen other women as well being treated differently because they fit a different stereotype?
Yes, I have, and I've seen women profit from it because they really played the game. I was actually at uni with a girl who did this, well, woman she was, and she was very driven, very ambitious, and she knew what she wanted to achieve. And she was tall, attractive, blonde, dressed beautifully. And she played that to go from job to job to get what she needed. And I think sometimes the men just appreciate it more if you play the role. I wasn't that good at playing that role. I'm too pragmatic for that. I would use it to get what I wanted when appropriate, but other times it's like, no, you take me as I am and I know what I'm talking about. So, but I really, really hope it's changed in this century, because I am talking about 80s and 90s, last century, which makes it
Honestly,
sound so long ago, doesn't it?
yeah. Okay, perspective. I'm not shy saying this. I was born in 89. My first year after school was '08. And I feel comforted. I feel like I could see myself in you a little bit. It seems like what you're saying, let me know if I'm getting this right, that you tell it how it is a bit or a
Yeah,
lot.
exactly.
And that right there, when we're wired and built to tell it how it is, the world is a lot more quick to shrug us off as rude, mean, whatever, when we're
Arrogant.
just being honest.
Yes.
Arrogant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been told that I'm too harsh. And I'm like, with this particular person, like, I was just being nice to you,
Yeah.
like, but also we take this in what we need to take into account is that, and this is what I go into in communication. So this gets into what I train. So we have our communication and we decide what our message is, what our intent in our message. We put it into words. We send it out there. The receiver receives it and they put it through their perception of the world. And so they interpret it the way that it meets their view of themselves and the world. So if someone is feeling lacking in self-confidence and they're very sensitive to people like just saying how it is, if they would really prefer a much softer, gentler, message, then it can be taken as rude, or I've also been called spiky and
Nice.
as I said, harsh. And I do, like, I've got to the stage now where I can go, well, okay, I recognize that. I recognize that sometimes that's how my words can appear, even though it's not my intent. And ChatGPT, like, I use chat as a counselor as well as for my business and everything else. And I asked him about this with particular conversation. And he said, well, I can see, let's look at the difference between intent and impact. Your intent was not negative at all, but the impact, because of where this person was, has been very negative. She's taken everything you've said and taken it in the most negative way that you could.
Yeah.
And I looked at my words and I went, like, I don't see how, but I can appreciate that we all have our way of being in the world. And that is the lens and the glasses through which we interpret the world around us and people and their communication.
Was dealing with some people today, I do have to tread carefully here, I was dealing with someone a year ago who comes from a big Catholic background and had a very quiet, cute personality, not a physically small person, but a very cute personality. And I would say some people who are more inclined to be conforming and they don't, personality-wise, they don't want to rock the boat, it's perhaps easier for them to be one of the cute ones. And then it's partly cultural for sure. I get so concerned that people just want women to be adorable instead of a rounded person. But then I'm severely concerned that there are fellow women out there who they decide if someone isn't adorable and reserved like they are, then there must be something wrong with.
Yeah. God, we could do a whole podcast on this. This is
Happily.
one of my subjects. And it's part of where the Reinvention journey, the coaching program, came from, is about helping women break through their limiting self-beliefs. Because we do grow up being told, was it little girls are sugar and spice and all things nice, and little boys are, what do little boys do? They're I don't know, they're rough and nasty, whatever it is. I forget. But there is these societal norms that are placed on us. This is part of our masks that we adapt and adopt. And we do. And it's like women shouldn't speak out. Women shouldn't rock the boat. Women shouldn't take risks. Women, what else is there? Shouldn't be too loud. Shouldn't be too different. We have so many things that are placed on us, and I don't fit those norms. I'm
It doesn't make you a bad person.
No, it makes me a great person because I'm unique, and you will always know exactly where you stand with me, unless you interpret it negatively when I've actually didn't mean it that way.
Exactly. I feel so encouraged tonight. This is probably the one episode that I needed. As much as all of them have taught me something, I have felt like I'm on the outside of things. I can tell you, look, it was weeks, within the last bunch of weeks or months, right? I got an email from my grandfather who's elderly and not having the best health, that sort of thing. We don't correspond a lot. And he sent this nostalgic email about the time when we went to Disneyland. I was about 10, give or take. Okay. And he said that back then, I can't remember the whole thing he wrote, but he said back then he wished that I would shut up. This is the person who got me into public speaking. I just
isn't that interesting?
Yeah, because here's the thing. I was in my early 20s brought into the public speaking space, but there was this assumption that I would be just talking when it's my turn, not ever revealing something I shouldn't reveal about my life. At one point, I was told in my 20s, shove those skeletons back in the closet. I absolutely heard that sort of thing.
Wow.
There was this expectation. Yeah, I was meant to play a role. But I very much grew up being that person who talked too much. I used to hear phrases from people like, you really like the sound of your own voice, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've had to break free from all of that to say, yeah, okay, I talk, let's do something with that. So it's very, very crushing to say, look, I know that my grandfather cares about me deeply, but of course there were the cultural norms, but there were people around me over the years who were having this attitude. And I can say it means so much that I'm finding people who don't mind that I talk a lot.
Hey, you've made a business out of it with your podcasts, although you probably let most of your guests do most of the speaking anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've chimed in a lot with you, but, we both have so much to say.
Shared.
But yeah, absolutely. So getting to the workplace again.
Yeah, we're really gone into, like, this is perfect segue now, because what I was just talking about, communication, is one of the things that it's one of my passion subjects. So I'll just go from working in IT industry. I then went into training, facilitating workshops in strategic selling and business partner relationship management. So, and I traveled all around Asia Pac, delivering those to the likes of Cisco, HP, Microsoft, Oracle. And I loved it. They were really good times. I got paid a lot of money. I got to travel business class sometimes, stay in 5-star hotels, and stand up in front of a room of, 20 people, mostly men, and help them see things a different way, which is one of the things I love doing. So after that disappeared, sadly, because I was working for a company called Siebel. They got bought out by Oracle, and Oracle sort of dropped the programs that I was training in. So that disappeared. And so then I got into the more general corporate training. Again, focus on sales, communication, the soft skills of management, supervisory skills, management skills, giving feedback, difficult conversations, all of those sorts of things. And that's what I was doing before I left Australia. And then I came to France, and as I said before, I wanted to start up this paid membership community, and it was going to be my future, and it was going to be the income that I could have. What we call, not necessarily not doing anything, but passive. It was going to be like closer to my passive income, and that didn't work. I actually I tried 3 different times to have a platform developed for this community. And the first time, and it cost me a lot of money. The first time cost me $8,500 US, and They did nothing. I was completely ripped off by it. The second time I got someone local to do the development. He perfectly understood everything I needed and wanted and the functionality, and he was really good at designing the front end. But he wasn't a web developer. He was a web designer, and he did the development as well. And it was like the back end was like spaghetti. So then I had to develop it again. And this time I got developers, created my own team for development, and from India and the Philippines. And again, spent a lot of money, created this fabulous platform. And it did everything I've wanted. It was really good. It looked great. But we went live in September. I realized I was at burnout in October, because you can imagine in these, it must have been 2020, 21, no, 22, maybe. I've lost track now. 22.
Sometime after COVID.
Yeah. So it was just at the tail end of COVID. So 2022. Yeah, realized I was at burnout in October, got COVID in November. And that was actually perfect for me, because I didn't have any choice but to lay on the couch and do nothing. I couldn't work. My brain wasn't capable of working. And so I had to pretty much take about 4 weeks off, I think. And then in December, I dropped a drawer on my big toe and broke it. I'm like,
Gosh.
and then in January, I was having these issues. Whenever I walked outside, I couldn't breathe, and I was getting this tightness in my chest, and went to, like, I'd had a full heart tests the previous, just a few months before, and everything was fine. And finally went back to my doctor and said, I can't live like this. It's debilitating. And she said, I think we need to get back to the cardiologist. And she said, go and have this test. And it was about 4:00 on a Friday. So I went and got the test. And midnight, I get a call from Dr. Giordano. And you know, when you see your doctor's name on your phone at midnight on a Friday night, you know it's not good news. And she said, you need to go to the hospital immediately. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, just go straight to hospital. And so I did. And when I walked in, I showed the sister the test, and she went, oh, they just whipped me and stripped me off, tests everywhere. And then they had to send me, they had to keep me in basically they wanted to keep me in for an angiogram. And they had to send me to a different hospital. So at 4:30 in the morning, I'm in an ambulance with the blue lights flashing, going through the streets of Nice to a hospital on the other side. That was another interesting experience. Anyhow, on the Monday, they did an angiogram, and I'm talking to the cardio surgeon, and he's saying, oh, well, we've found the blockage already. And I said, oh, and he said, yeah, your artery is 99% blocked. And I said, oh, which artery? And he said, oh, the main one in your heart. Now, I found out since it's called the widowmaker artery, because usually when something goes wrong with that, you just drop dead on the spot. And I went, oh, and I knew the weekend before that I'd been looking for my car and hadn't been able to find it. It's another story we don't have time for now, but I remember thinking, I feel like I could die. I'm okay to go another 15 minutes if you want, if that's okay.
It sounds good.
I feel like I could die, but I didn't. I felt like I could, but I didn't think I would. But when I got home, like 40 minutes later after driving home, and I took my blood pressure, and it was something like 180 over 120 or something. And my heart rate, this is after sitting in the car for 40 minutes, my heart rate was going crazy. And so I was on this operating table going, wow, I was this close to dying. And so I'm ever grateful I've obviously got a very strong heart, and that works in both ways, physically and emotionally. So I realized after that this business I was trying to make work, but it wasn't working, was literally killing me. It was causing so much stress for me, and I had to let it go. Like, I'd invested something like 40,000 euros in total, and I had to let it go. And that's a really big lesson, like, what's his name? He sings the song, you got to know when to hold them, know when to, know when to bed it, and know when to fold them. And so that was what I did. And then I sort of decided to focus on coaching women in this reinvention journey and breaking through their limiting beliefs. And I spent a year promoting that and, doing all that I could to promote that. And it is like, the women who did go through it absolutely loved it, totally changed their lives. Within the first couple of months, they could see, incredible difference in themselves and in the way they were thinking and their believing and behaving. But I just couldn't. Again, I couldn't get enough clients to make that a sustainable business. And I think that's partly because the whole coaching world now, it's just so saturated and it's really hard to break through. So about a year ago, I started thinking, well, maybe I should go to back to my corporate training. Because I love doing that. I love being in front of a group of people, facilitating them and helping them have the ahas. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, never thought of it that way. So that's really good. And I found out here, I sort of started looking at the yachting industry, and it's in desperate need of leadership and communication training. So I sort of from about September last year, I started focusing on the leadership and communication training in the yachting industry. So everything's just been an evolution. It's not like I've been a dramatic, stop this and try. Well, I sort of have, yes. Anyhow, that's where I'm at now, producing programs and working with a yacht company, Blue Water Yachting. They're really well known here on the Riviera, and they're in Antibes, and I'm working with them to deliver their management training and also coming up with programs of my own to focus on crew communication and team dynamics, and maybe support for captains, and also and something else. But so it's coming together nicely now. And I've identified that what I really do is people dynamics. I'm an expert in dynamics that occur between people. And that I've got a whole story to explain that, but we're running out of time.
Are you feeling like you need a part 2 another time?
Oh, actually, no, I said I could go another 10 minutes. I can do this.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
I keep seeing so many insights in what you're saying. I wanted to chime in at least with a one-liner to say, back then you'd spend $40,000 to create a membership space, and now you're using school, where I've heard people can sign up for $9 or whatever on earth it is.
It costs me $9 a month.
Yeah. These tools are so cheap, and I'm using Riverside for the podcast. I mean, I'm on the yearly deal, but these tools are so cheap now. It's so cheap to make something.
It's a really good point, because I sort of developed it with WordPress, not quite from scratch, but used lots of plugins, which just made it more complicated. But yes, it's so much easier to get the resources and tools that we need to support ourselves in our business today. And I might start up another school community for the captains.
Absolutely. And if you need a website, I've been doing websites with Claude Code, and I'm obsessed with how good it is.
Really?
But,
okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I moved 2 of my websites, my portfolio and my Melanie site, onto Claude Code because it uses a space that hosts it for free, and then the Claude Code does the rest of it. So I'm literally not spending any money at all on those websites anymore.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
And you've got the maintenance and support happening as well.
Well, it's just the AI handles it. I'm still using Squarespace for the podcast, but for the others, that's because Squarespace has a few features. If I wanted to have a store in it, I don't.
Yeah.
It's like I could add stores to the Claude Code. But basically.
I've always used WordPress and had my websites developed in WordPress. So I have a few. While we're talking about websites, getrealcommunication.com is the one that currently talks about my women's coaching and reinvention journey, and another one called Unlock Your Next Chapter, a short 1-month program. But I also have JaneenSonsie.com, which is my blog site for my journey of moving to France. What I have to do now is I have to move the women's coaching under JaneenSonsie.com as more of my personal brand, and Get Real Communication needs to focus on people dynamics, leadership, communication for the business world and yachting. So I have to
feeling
recreate.
We'll chat about that sometime, trust me. But I was keen to ask you, how did you I get those deals, so to speak, as a corporate trainer. So many people want to share their wisdom with corporate teams. How did you enter that market?
Oh, I entered it by actually working for subcontracting to training companies. I did not get deals myself, and I will totally agree it is very difficult because at the beginning of this year, I was also trying to find training companies over here, but it is difficult. That was where the location made it difficult, being even though Nice has an international airport and I can fly anywhere, it just makes it more difficult because it's not, it's going on in Paris and London, not on the Riviera. But yeah, I can't help people with getting their corporate training deals. I'd love to have the answer to that.
Find companies that are, well, you do have the answer. Find companies that are already doing it.
Yes. Yeah. And try and get in as an associate trainer with them. That's the easiest way in. Because otherwise, I think you've got to, people who leave a job and have all the contacts, they can then, it's easier for them to go in. But when you don't have the contacts and you don't have that network in the corporate world, particularly with HR managers or sales managers or managers who would be wanting the training, it's difficult to get in. Can I just talk about a little bit about people dynamics?
Yes, I'll just let you talk about anything for the last 5 or 10 or whatever you have left, and I'll just not chime in at all.
No, this will be quick. So this is the concept I've come up with, people dynamics. And I think it's best illustrated if you think of a team as a machine, and every machine has lots of components and cogs in it. So each person in your team is a component of your machine. And every component has its own attributes and characteristics. So if we look at people, they have their personality, their attitude, their experience, their background, their culture, their belief, their emotional and mental well-being, their belief in themselves, and the way they communicate. Everyone has their own communication style. That's to name a few. So we've got all of these attributes being brought into the machine. And all of these, they have to work together, don't they? Like the cogs going round. And it's up to the leader to make sure that machine keeps working to its potential. Now, the oil for that machine is the communication. Because by oiling the machine with the right communication, you can reduce you can reduce risk. But if you don't have the right communication within the team, then you will increase the friction in the team, and that will reduce the performance of the machine and the performance of the team. So that is what is people dynamics, is looking at this whole picture of how the team works together and how individuals play out. And one of my skills is being able to see below the surface. I'm very intuitive, and I can just talk to people and I can get an insight as to what's going on for them and what's playing out, because there's always a reason. Someone might be behaving badly, or they might be aggressive at work. There's something going on there. You don't just treat the aggression. And same with the conflict. Okay, there's conflict occurring. My question is, well, why? Let's talk to the individuals and find out, well, what's going on for them and why do they think the situation is the way they perceive it? And then get together and work out the compromise. So I don't work at that surface level. I help people to understand themselves, which is where I bring in the personal development and my history and experience and everything else.
Get to the depth below the surface.
Yeah. And help, help make the people dynamics positive rather than negative.
That is needed everywhere, whether it's corporate workplaces, whether it's community groups, it's human nature.
Families.
Totally. I'm not going
to get into families.
Totally. It's human nature. Is a lot of this relatively universal because it's all dealing with people.
Yeah. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to learn what you are teaching because we're all dealing with people. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Whether we are corporate or not, but I know you're specializing in corporate training, but we all can learn something about other people,
Yeah.
how to make
I
it
think
work.
we all need to try and understand other people better and understand that not everyone sees the world or what happens or, anything the same way we do, and have compassion and empathy and respect for that.
Janeen, thank you so much for talking on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
I'm glad.